I'm a space cadet.
Oh my God, you are so cute. Hi, I'm Dyanne. I'm an alcoholic. Hello. How the hell are you? I am actually really glad to be here tonight. I have been sober for a while, and very often I don't want to do what they ask me to do. I don't know if you ever feel like that. You know how sometimes you're like really cozy and you just don't want to get your sorry butt up and go talk in a meeting. But I actually really wanted to come tonight. A friend of mine came with me, and I like this group. I love your walls, and excuse me, I've had a cold. I love your walls, and you're a really up group. And if you want to crosstalk, it's okay with me, but I'll probably point you out to the crowd. So you know, take a risk. I have been, the reason I'm here tonight is not because I'm old and not because I had a very close and personal relationship with God my entire life. The reason I'm here is because I drank a lot, and I did it really badly for a long time. And I kept thinking that if I just went to the better bars, or if I just drank the margaritas without the salt, or maybe if I just drank in Florida, this time it would be different, and I would be able to drink like some of the people I knew who did not get arrested and did not go to prison and who did not get beaten up and who did not lose everything they owned. I mean, I moved. By the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I could carry everything in a bag. And my car had hit everything on its way. And so I came to you with nothing. I was born into a family who probably shouldn't have had kids because they really didn't like them. And I know that's not why I'm an alcoholic, but it did make me really uncomfortable growing up. My parents really didn't like kids. They still don't like kids, so I know it's not personal. But it was uncomfortable for me when I was young, and I was one of those kids that just was big. I had big bones, big bone structure, and I felt a lot like Baby Huey. Some of you who are older will remember Baby Huey was just that big-ass duck. You know, he was just big, and he wore diapers because he was just like a kid, and he just used to squash things by accident, and that's kind of how I felt about myself. I was just like really awkward, really clumsy, and oh God, so self-conscious. I mean, just didn't want to do anything without thinking it out very carefully so that I didn't make any mistakes, and God forbid if I appear foolish in public. I mean, please don't let people know I don't know something. So I grew up feeling just very, very awkward and very inadequate. And some things happened to me when I was young that also made me feel damaged and soiled. And so I had all of those things going into school, and I found myself paying attention to what everybody else did because I didn't know how to fit in. I got into school, and it looked like everybody brought a friend but me. I mean, I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know how you got friends. And I didn't want to play any sports because what if I did it wrong? God forbid if I take a risk. I mean, I might like hurt myself or fall and appear foolish in public. I couldn't do that. One of the first things I ever identified with in Alcoholics Anonymous was when they used to say, I don't know if they say this anymore, but they used to say, you know, the difference between alcoholics and non-alcoholics is when non-alcoholics get flat tires, they call AAA. We call suicide prevention. That is the first thing I ever identified with here because that's what I did. I mean, I was like intense. I felt everything all the time. And what alcohol did for me is change my life. I don't know what it did for you, but it absolutely changed my life because I was afraid all the time before I drank. I was in trouble all the time, so that didn't change much, but I was afraid all the time. When I was 14 years old, somebody handed me a bottle of peppermint schnapps. And I'm going to tell you, I love peppermint schnapps. It was smooth, tasted like candy canes. And it made me smart and funny and pretty. Oh my God, I was so cool. I mean, I just wanted like a gallon. I knew that that was the problem. I had like some sort of deficiency. That if I would have had that when I was young, I would be like the rest of you. I just knew that that made the difference for me. When I drank, I could talk to anybody. I could say anything. And then after a few, I didn't care. I mean, I didn't care if you liked me. I didn't care if you were there. I didn't care about anything. That was my favorite place to be. And being alcoholic, you get there pretty regularly. I started hanging out with lower companions almost immediately because I really like to drink. I drank my way through school. I ended up, at the age of 15, getting arrested for probably the 4th time. I started running away from home when I was 10. So that might let you know that home was not a happy place for me. And I never got very far. They used to come and get me. When I ran away, when I got older, they would put me in juvenile hall. When I was 15 years old, I was hanging out with a bunch of friends of mine. All of them were over 21 except for 3 of us. And they were buying the booze, and we were drinking. And we were having so much fun. I mean, you know, it can be fun. We were drinking beer. We ran out of beer, so we started drinking sloe gin. We ran out of sloe gin, and somebody came up with a pint of Bacardi. Oh, it was so smooth. And they said, you know, if you can chug this pint of Bacardi, you're a champ. And you know, what I know when somebody says, I dare you, if you can do it, you are so cool. And they're going to like you for at least 10 minutes. I mean, you will be like the star for at least 10 minutes. So I'm going to chug this pint. It doesn't matter that I've been drinking all day. It doesn't matter that I'm 15. I'm going to chug this pint because God knows I need to be cool. The other thing you need to know about me is that I was desperate to be loved. Just desperate. I didn't know that. And I would have never admitted that to you. But I was desperate for your approval and your love, and I never felt worthy of it. So I'm chugging this pint of Bacardi rum, and the next thing I know, it is 4 o'clock in the morning. And I am not at the beach anymore. I am not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. I don't know where the hell I am, but there are policemen there. And this is not a good sign. And somebody had vomited all over me. Later, I found out it was me, but I didn't know at the time. I had just been beaten. I mean, I had 2 black eyes. I was cut and bruised, and I had sand everywhere. And I didn't have a clue what had happened. And I've got to tell you, I'm sober 28 years old. I'm 28 years. I'm 53 years old, and I still don't remember. I only know what they told me. And what they told me was that I was really drunk after that Bacardi, and they threw me in a Corvette and tried to take me home, and I grabbed the wheel when we were going 100 miles an hour and almost killed us. Now, I can't tell you if that's true or not. I can tell you that's what they told me I did. And it just pissed them off. And so they hit me. And then they threw me in the pool, tried to save me, to get me sober, and almost drowned me. And we ended up getting busted by the cops behind Winchell's, where we all used to have fun. And they took me to the hospital, and then they took me to jail, and then they took me back to the hospital because I was very sick. And the doctor told my mom that had I not thrown up, I would have been dead. I was 15. And I'd like to tell you it got better than that for me, but it didn't. I continued to drink until I was 25 years old, and I never drank better than that. I drank different. I drank in different places with different people, different kinds of drinks, different amounts, and it never ended up better than that for me. I'm an alcoholic, and I can start drinking, but I can never tell you if I'm going to stop. And I can guarantee you that somebody's going to pay down the road because I'm not a good drinker. And the difference between alcoholics and non-alcoholics is also the way we behave after we drink. I have a friend who's a priest. And he said to me one time, you know, I don't drink anymore. I said, why? And he said, well, I was in Rome, and I was drinking these liqueurs, and we went out partying, and I got so sick. I just thought, I'm not drinking that stuff anymore. And so I was in Rome still, and I went out with some people. We were drinking brandy, and I just drank too much, and I got sick, and I thought, you know what, I'm not drinking anymore. I said, what the hell is the matter with you? Why didn't you just leave Rome? I mean, that's what I would have done. You don't quit drinking after 2 bad spots. You just leave Rome, you change jobs, you change cars, you change wives, you change husbands, you change kids. You change things. You don't give up drinking. So I knew for sure he was not an alcoholic. The people I know would give up their right arm before they would give up drinking because, of course, it's not us. And it's not the drinking, it's not the drugs. I grew up in the 60s. There was a drug for everything. Elevate your mood, lower your mood, color your mood, bring invisible people to your... I did a lot of stuff. I did a little acid. I loved acid. You know that no-risk drug where you sit in the chair and life just happens for you? You don't have to do anything. I mean, I just love that. It made me happy. The other thing about alcoholics is we never know when to quit. I mean, I know people who will drink 2 drinks and will say, oh my God, I'm feeling it. Got to stop. What? Excuse me? You're feeling it and you're stopping? Give me more. I was drinking one night. This guy was buying me wine. I loved it when people bought me with things. So I just kept drinking, but I was sick. I had just this knot in my stomach, and I knew that if I drank much more wine, I was going to throw up. I knew it, so I told him, don't buy me anymore. He just kept buying it for me. And I ended up throwing up all over the bar, all over him, all over my pants. I mean, I was a mess. And he said, God, why didn't you just stop drinking? Has anyone ever asked you that? Why didn't you just stop drinking? Because you bought it. I mean, it was there. I had to drink it. I did not know how to stop. I didn't have a shut-off. There are some things about us that are similar. And if you cannot control and enjoy your drinking, if you cannot stop when it's absolutely essential that you stop, if you drink so that you can be more social, so that you can have fun, if you drink because you don't know anything else to do, if you drink when it means that you lose your job, there's probably a chance that you have a problem with alcohol. And what I found out in recovering from alcoholism is that even if you don't have a problem with alcohol, this ain't a bad place. I mean, there are some things that I've done that absolutely made no sense to me that have changed my life. So I drank very badly for a long time. I went to jail. I went to juvenile hall. I went to reform school. I spent time locked up. I spent time getting beaten up. I spent time alienated from everyone in my family. And then I decided to get married and live happily ever after. You know how that just occurs to you? Like, it's such a good idea. I could share. I'm not good at sharing, but it just seemed like having somebody who was socially obligated to love you would be a really good thing. So I went out looking for somebody to marry. And the first time I got married, I married somebody who I was dealing drugs with because it just seemed like a good business move. And we got together. He said, will you marry me? I said yes. I mean, that was all it took from me. Will you marry me? You got it. And when I tried to get an annulment, I didn't know enough about him to do it. I didn't know if he ever went to high school. I didn't know who his parents were. I didn't know anything. I didn't live really firmly based in reality. I had a lot of fantasy going on. I mean, I just wanted to do things. I was a person who wanted to be a cheerleader. And I gave it up because I thought I'd probably die of humiliation if I ever dropped my pom-pom or kicked somebody. I also wanted to be a surfer. And I had a surfboard because I loved the idea of being a surfer. It was just so cool. The beach. And I carried my surfboard everywhere I went but the ocean because I don't like the ocean. I never go in the ocean. Never did. But I wanted to be a surfer. And that's how I got married. I wanted to be married, so I got a husband. It was a prop, just like the surfboard. And it's really kind of unfair to do that with people. I've done that a lot in my life. I just get props, get somebody there to make up the difference for me being half. And I was married for a while and realized that he was not going to be socially obligated to love me. In fact, he didn't even like me very much because I drank a lot and I went out at night and I didn't come home. And was starting to irritate him. So we decided that maybe we weren't meant to be together, and we separated, and I decided to go to college and become a psychiatrist, which of course I was quite capable of doing. So I went to school. I started taking all the appropriate classes. I took sociology and psychology and anthropology and ended up over in Norwalk State Mental Hospital. Pretty much what I do. I mean, I have always had tremendous goals. Always. I have great dreams. It's just that when I get up, I get disoriented, and I can't quite figure out how to do it. You know, because there is a lot of footwork involved in living. Even if you're not an alcoholic, you know, they say you do the footwork and the results will follow, but even if you're not an alcoholic, There's work involved in living. You got to do the footwork. Well, I got confused there. I always thought you should do it for me. So somebody else fix it. Somebody else make it happen. I mean, I'm here. I'm available. And so I always fell short of my goal. I ended up in the nut house. And I stayed in the nut house for a while. And when I got out, I was 25 years old. I had no one in my family speaking to me. I owned nothing except for a 54 Chevy that I had never washed because it was just too hard. And a lot of people had thrown up on it. So it was not an attractive car. And I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous for the third time. I came here when I was 18, but I was way too young. I don't know if any of you are young tonight, but I'll tell you, you're not too young. But I was way too young when I was 18. They were old then. They were like 30 and 50. I thought, when you're 50, of course, you could stay sober. What's left? I mean, you stay sober a few years and you die when you're 50. And it's easy to think that when you're young. It was easy for me because I knew that I was going to live a long time, and I did not want to do it without drinking. I did not. And I'm 53 now, and it's like, hey, a new beginning. I mean, I even figure I'll probably be able to have an emotional relationship that lasts longer than 6 months. I mean, I figure I'm probably going to be able to get good at that eventually. I haven't given up on anything. However, when I was 18, you just looked old. So I left and did all of that other stuff, got married and divorced and went to college and went to the nut house, and then I came back. Nothing changed for me. I was still pathetic, but I came back. I was much older. I was 25, and you guys just got so much younger. I mean, it was amazing to me what happens when you don't die. You get old and everyone else gets young. And so I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I sat in a room with tables that looked like this. And I'll tell you, I was at the bottom. I had nothing. There was no one in my life, no one speaking to me, no one. I owned nothing. And I came in the meeting, and I looked at those tables, and they said that we were having a roundtable discussion. And all I could think of was, I'm not sitting at those tables because they probably do this to newcomers. They think I don't know that that's not a round table. I'm not sitting there. And I sat in the back of the room because I was afraid you were going to make fun of me when I left. I was so self-centered that the first few meetings I went to, I wouldn't go to the bathroom because I knew everyone was watching me. I was sober a little while, and I realized nobody ever watched me. They were all too busy with themselves. It made it a lot easier for me. It's like, oh my God, self-centeredness is universal. I don't have to worry about anything. Most of the people didn't even remember my name. So, but I was very self-conscious when I was new. And I listened to the things that you said. I listened to the steps that were read tonight, and people said things like, you need to take a searching and fearless moral inventory. Really? And you need to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand him. Oh, well, you know how I understood God? I figured if he found out I wanted to live, he'd kill me. Like that, because I was figuring he was pretty pissed at me. I had not been one of his best subjects, so I wasn't all that anxious to be turning my will and my life over to him. Plus, you kind of figure, if you know anything about God the way I heard it, secondhand, that he wants you to be good. And I wasn't. And I didn't think that I was going to get good. So I figured that the stuff that had to do with God, I didn't want to do. And then they said that you had to tell somebody all your secrets. Ooh, but I could have gotten in a lot of trouble if you knew some of the stuff I did. So I'm not going to do that step. I was marking off the steps I'm not going to do. Okay, I admit I'm an alcoholic, okay? And I admit I'm powerless, but I don't want to do all this other stuff. Let's see. Let's go down to where you help other people. Yeah, that'll work for me. I want to help other people, but I would really rather get married. I really think that's a good idea. So what I did is I got sober, and I was just pissed. I don't know if any of you came in just mad, but it was the easiest emotion to deal with. You didn't have to worry about anybody hurting you or getting close to you because they just didn't want to, because they never knew what you were going to do. So if they touched you on the shoulder, you could hit them. And so people stayed a little bit away from me. especially the Al-Anons in my area, and they just didn't want to get close. And so I went to meetings, and I did go because I was looking for God's will. You know what God's will is. It's what you want. You know, if you want it, it's God's will. When you're new, you look at people, they say, I had a job and I lost it. Broke my heart, but you know what? I have the best job I ever had. God's will for me. My car broke down. Somebody gave me a car. God's will for me, and I was quick. I realized that quickly that, you know what? This is good. God's going to give me, I'm going to find God's will for me. So I started going to more meetings. I stepped them up so that I could search him out. And I'm sitting in the back of this Alcathon one night. It's these 24-hour meetings that raise money for the Lifeline. And I'm looking up there, and there is this speaker. Oh, my God. He's just beautiful. He's really hairy, and he's got big brown eyes, and he's just, oh, he was so nice. And I thought, you know, bet you that's God's will for me. I will bet you money, because I listened to him talk, and he was 10 months sober, and his name was Crazy John. My sponsor's name was Crazy Annie. Oh, really? That's right. It was meant to be. Crazy Annie was Irish Annie, who died last year, or the year before, actually, and she ended up being one of the greatest inspirations in my life. But at that time, she was just nuts. And I met Crazy John, and it was like a match made in heaven. We were meant to be together. You know how you know that? Now, understand this. I never read the book. So I never read the part about boy meets girl on AA campus. It was love for me. And I mean, I knew this was it. My heart was beating fast. I was warm. This is it. So we sat down and talked, and we had a lot in common. We were both 10 months sober. We both knew a lot about AA. You know how that is. And we both played guitar, that was it, really. And so we decided we were meant to be together, and we decided to get married. And he went and told his wife and kids what had happened, and that he, you know what I mean? And after his divorce was final, we got married and lived happily ever after for 11 months. I mean, that is a long time for me, a long time. And you know what I found out is dishonesty is dishonesty, and it doesn't really work here where we're trying to live a life based on honesty. I mean, I'm not telling you not to make mistakes. Some of the greatest growth I have ever encountered in recovery has come from the errors and judgment I've made. You get a lot of good experience, and then you get better judgment if you don't die. But I have seen some people make some bad decisions and not make it back here. So what I have learned is there's a price attached to everything. And if you want to stay sober, and if you want the good things in life, probably need to make some better choices. At least that was true for me. I was also elected treasurer of my home group at 4 years sober and stole all their money. Was not a good move. I ended up, after a year and a half, having to pay them back. I mean, because what I know is I couldn't stay sober with that. But I did it. I stole everything they had. They couldn't even pay their rent. It was so sad. And I only meant to borrow it. But you just can't borrow all of it, because they need some. And I ended up having to go to my group and saying, you know what, I took all your money. And I'm really sorry, and I'll pay you back as much as I can, but like I didn't like working a lot, and I had this job that paid $100 a week, and you just don't have a lot of extra money. So they let me pay them back. It took me 2 years to pay them back. But I paid them back every penny. And the other thing, I was listening to Colin talk about owing a lot of money in his amends steps. And what I know is I owed a lot of money, but I owed it to people I never met. Because I used to steal purses from under bathroom stall. So if it was any of you ladies, I am so sorry. But I bought a lot of groceries for a lot of people over the years to make amends to the people I didn't know that I stole from. There are ways to make amends, and there isn't a time limit. You don't have to do all the financial ones when you can't. They never ask you to not eat or to not feed your family, just to start making restitution for things. And by the time I got back to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had a lot of restitution. And the first 5 years I was sober, I created a lot more. I did not stay sober in the way that many of you have. Like, I didn't just come in and say, please give me the steps, let me read the book, let me have a sponsor, let me do everything you say. I was just annoying. And after a while, I started to understand, when God's will left, actually. We were married for 11 months, and he left to practice his principle in another affair. And When he left, I was devastated. I mean, absolutely devastated that he could leave me like that I wasn't any more special than that. And I wanted to die. And my sponsor said, you know, short of dying, perhaps you could work the steps. I mean, perhaps you could just like pretend like you're like everybody else and not unique and special and work the steps just like they'd work for you. Hell, I might as well. So I started with one, and I worked every step to the best of my ability, and I've done some of them over. I've taken several inventories, and what I want to tell you is it's changed my life. There is absolutely no way in the world that I ever would be doing the things I'm doing today had I not made some drastic changes in my behavior. Because no, I hated working. The first job I ever got in AA, I got fired from because I only like to work for 15 minutes at a time, and then I like to take a break and like smoke and have coffee and chat. And employers, if they pay you for 8 hours, they really expect you to work. So over the years, I learned to work. And, you know, I didn't know how to do anything because burglary is not good on your resume. I mean, it's not. I had no marketable skills. And I hadn't finished college. I ended up in the nut house, and that's not marketable. So what happened to me was absolutely miraculous. And I just want to share with you so that if you're starting at the bottom somewhere, don't ever quit. Don't ever quit until you get to the end of what you're doing. Because the first job I ever got was driving a pickup truck for a typesetting company. And I didn't know what the hell typesetting was, and I didn't know how to drive the truck. It was a stick shift. Didn't have a clue. But the guy gave me the keys. He said, if you can learn to drive this in 10 minutes, you got the job. I did. Ground those gears right down. But I learned, and I still know how to drive a stick shift. It was great. So I drove pickup and delivery for this guy for a while, and after a few months, one of their typesetters quit. He asked me if I knew how to type. I did. Not very fast, but I learned in high school. Who knew that would work? So I'm typing for him. I'm doing typesetting, and from that job, through a series of more advanced jobs, I am now a managing editor for a publishing company of auto racing magazines. I have a great job. I live at the beach. I actually have a car that's paid for. I have car insurance, which I always thought was stupid because they cancel you when you get in a wreck. But I've been lucky. The older I get, the more careful I get, and I don't get in that many wrecks anymore. And I am everything I didn't want to be. And I got to tell you, it's the best it's ever been for me. I started going to meetings regularly. I started participating in recovery. I started sponsoring people after I was sober 6 years. Nobody really wanted me before then because I had a lot of glitches, you know, like the stealing and the marrying other people's husbands and stuff. So I kind of had to get past that before people were asking me for help. But after I was sober 6 years, they started asking me, and that has been one of the most wonderful experiences of my life, watching someone with no light in their eyes, with absolutely no hope of any better life, come into Alcoholics Anonymous and recover and do all the things they ever wanted to do, have kids, adopt kids, get married, get a job, have a career, get a new house. I mean, all the things that anyone else can do, we can do. We just have to get our heads out of our butts and walk forward like other people do. I mean, you know, you just got to move forward. And it's possible. The thing that has been so wonderful about being sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for me is I've never had to do it alone. Now, there have been times when I've chosen to do it alone because I didn't want to tell you what I was doing. But I've never had to do it alone. And when I did come and tell you what I was doing, you loved me. And you told me, it's all right, just don't do it anymore. When I stole all the money from my home group, and I told them, they told me about all the other people who stole money. And the ones who stayed sober were the ones who paid them back. And I thought, well, that's cool. I'll be on the winners list there, one of the top 10 thieves in that group. I was delegate of the area. I got involved in general service after God's Will left me, and my sponsor suggested I get into some useful part of Alcoholics Anonymous, and got involved in general service and did that for 10 years, was the delegate of this area, went to New York and watched how massive egos get put down for the good of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, people actually step on themselves so that Alcoholics Anonymous keeps going, and so that those of us who have a little megalomania don't take over. I used to know when I had, I was not delegate, but when I was committee person, they gave me a gavel. I love this gavel because you could just like call things to order and make people stop. I just loved it. I love that power. And what I know about that is that feeling of having control and power is such an illusion. I mean, you don't have it. But that gavel gave me that. So what they did with me is they just rotated me out. As soon as I knew exactly what I was doing and I started helping you fix things, they gave me a new job where I was inadequate and knew nothing. And that's when I'm of the maximum use to you and to God. That's the other thing I learned here, is there are a lot of things I do in my life. I have a great job, I have great friends, I have an interesting life. But my purpose in recovering, my purpose in being here at this meeting tonight is to be of maximum service to you and to God. And to tell you that the only thing that you need to do to have a chance at this is not drink. That's the only thing you need to do. The other things become important after you feel really bad for a long time. That's the way it was for me. I started feeling nasty. So I had to work the steps and stuff and share with other people and go to meetings. That's when that became important. But all I had to do to have a chance is not drink. And if you stay close to people in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's not an impossible task. It's not always easy for us. I spent 4 years, when I was about 11 years sober, depressed, so depressed, thinking that I had failed Alcoholics Anonymous, that I was a big mess here, that I would never recover, that I would never be worth it, and just pitiful. And you know, the mistake I made is instead of going to a meeting and saying that, where you guys would all heckle me and say mean things to me and piss me off, so I wasn't depressed anymore, I stayed home. I stayed home and I felt sorry for myself and I crawled up on my couch and I got all cozy with my misery and figured I'd let you down and never gave you a chance to help me. I ended up getting put in a hospital by my doctor because I had done all the right things. I sponsored a lot of people and they wouldn't let me go. And they made me get help. They forced me to do it. And I ended up with a psychologist who was like Mary Poppins. I mean, I've never met anybody who was this happy. And when you're depressed, you don't want happy. You want somebody who understands how absolutely devastating it is to be you and how tragic your life is. And all he could do is point out the good things. I really didn't like him. And he spent a lot of time with me. And after about a year, I really started understanding what he was talking about. He said, you know, you just need to go to the meetings and sit there and let them love you. And suicide is an angry, selfish thing to do. People who love you don't deserve that, because I was determined I was going to kill myself. That was it. And he said it's really an angry, selfish thing to do. So I spent a lot of time with him, and I got a lot of hope with him because he made me come back to meetings. And this is where it lives for me. Hope lives with you. When I'm with you, I know I can do anything. Might not be easy and it might take me a long time, but I know I can because you give me that courage. He took a gun and blew his head off in 1986, and he was right. Suicide's an angry, selfish thing to do to people who care about you. For the longest time, I thought it was my fault. I thought he spent too much time with me, and he didn't have enough time to help himself. And what I know is sometimes people lead you to the light and they never see it. And I'm sorry. And there's not anything I can do about that. All I can tell you is if you want an opportunity to live life in a way it would have never occurred to you, if you want an opportunity to feel vital and useful and substantial in life, stay in recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. Do the things they ask you to do. Take somebody to a meeting, pick up chairs, put coffee cups out. This is the greatest group. You guys have something going on all the time. You have all these workshops. The other thing that changed in my life is I actually have found, through Alcoholics Anonymous, a personal relationship with God. Really scared me for a long time because I just figured he had low tolerance for me. But the way my life is today, I'm a person who had a lot of garbage, a lot of emotional garbage. And one of the things I always loved to do was sing, but I had a lot of problems there because my mom always told me I couldn't. And I like that. I like Pop Tops too. My mom always told me I couldn't sing, so I had just a lot of conflict. And about a year and a half ago, a friend of mine asked me to join this choir at church, which I don't go to church. So, I didn't know why she wanted me to join the choir at church. But she said, you don't have to go to church. You just have to go to church when you sing. Now, now I'm Catholic, and it was a Catholic church. So, okay, I'll go to church and I'll sing. I like to sing. And I'm in a big group, and it's not going to be so scary. And that was in September of 1999, and I sing every Sunday in church, in the choir. And I met somebody there who has as great a passion for life and music as I've ever seen in my life. And he is teaching me one day at a time how to not be afraid of my gifts, of everything that I am. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. I don't know what any of you want. I don't know what any of your dreams are. But I can tell you this, nothing is impossible. Nothing. I couldn't have told you that I would be doing the things I do today 2 years ago because it never occurred to me. And I'm sober a long time. And I still hold out hope for God's will for me. Only this time I figure it's not going to be a hostage. It's going to be somebody who actually wants to be there. And I have never had, on Saturday, I had a bunch of friends, well, actually, the women I sponsor over for brunch, which I cooked. I don't cook. But I wanted to do something for Christmas for the women I sponsor, and I couldn't think of anything, you can only buy so many mugs. So I had them over to my house, and it was just a lovely morning. I mean, we just had a lovely time together. I'm not a person who was ever overly social, but Alcoholics Anonymous has allowed me to get to know people on a different level, and it's been lovely for me. The other thing I started doing is working in H&I again. Started going to juvenile hall. I work with those little felons. I love those little guys. And a few years back, I took one of the race car drivers out there to talk to them about, not ever giving up on your dreams and living for yourself and doing the things you want to do and not ever feeling hopeless. And they loved him. And he was going to go back and then got killed in a race in 1996. And it kind of devastated the kids. So I started going back, talking to him every week. And then I ran out of things to say, so I started taking things to bake. And now I have like little baking with felons every other Thursday I go and we bake, and they put on these funny hats and these little rubber gloves, and we make brownies and cakes and cupcakes and cookies for the other kids. And it's just been delightful. And they talk to me about their lives. They talk to me about their history, about their parents, about their pain. And I can't imagine, I just can't imagine that somebody like me could be useful. None of you knew what I was like, and I'm sure some of you feel like that. I'm just a waste. Please don't give up on yourselves. Please take one step at a time, do one day at a time, and just keep coming back, because it is an absolute joy to be sober. Thanks.